Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are in chapter number 9, and we are looking at scriptural guidelines for observing the Sabbath. The Sabbath is first mentioned in Genesis when God rested from his work of creation. The fourth commandment, Sabbath, is the only one of the 10 that Jehovah says that we are specifically to remember. In Exodus 28, he says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Remember implies that the practice of observing the Sabbath preceded the giving of the law. And we know that in Exodus chapter 20, the law was given. However, in Exodus chapter 16, Moses gave all the people, the Israelites and foreigners, instructions concerning what they were to do on the Sabbath. In Exodus 16, he says, and it came to pass that on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man, and all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. And he said unto them, this is that which Jehovah has said. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto Jehovah. Bake that which you will bake today, and seethe that you will seethe, and that which remaineth over lay up for you to be kept until the morning. Now, maybe Jehovah said to remember the Sabbath because he knew how easy it would be for us to forget it. I know for me, and I was just thinking, my wife and I, we were here a few Sabbaths ago, and we were on our way home. And I'm thinking, I'm with my wife. We're out, we're riding. It's a beautiful day. We're headed home after the Sabbath, and I come up with a dumb idea. I said, honey, let's stop here and get some fish. And she thought I was joking or something. Now the sun is still out. It's the Sabbath day. Now, I'm so thankful that when I've lost my mind, that I have another mind that is still sane. And she said, you know this is the Sabbath, don't you? And I'm thinking, what am I thinking? Just that quick. I just left Sabbath. And, I'm one, I don't do stuff like this. But for that moment, there was a lapse in judgment. And that's how easy it is. And this is why I say to folks out there in communities that don't have fellowship around them and people around them to encourage them and to hold them accountable and to provoke one another. And I was really dumbfounded that I let something dumb like that come out of my mouth, and I felt even more dumb because my wife had to correct me. I'm the one who do the correction. Hallelujah. He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from Jehovah. I could imagine walking up in that place thinking, oh my goodness, what am I doing? Thank you, honey. We are to do no work on the Sabbath or have others work for us. Now, I know that there's people out there who have, they've made big deals about, being in hotels on the Sabbath day. And I've had to, not that I'm trying to condone anything, because I'm not. See, having other people work for us is not going to a cafeteria or going to a gas station and there's people working. Being in a hotel is not making anybody work. See, what the Almighty says is that I cannot make my servants work, my sons, my daughters, my male servants, my female servants. These are people that are particularly answerable to me, that I make their paychecks out or that live within the confines of my property. Anyone who is contracting with me, I am not their master. I am not their boss. And so I'm not Time Warner's boss. When we come here on the Sabbath and we flick on a switch and Duke Power, make those lights come on, Duke don't work for me. They contract services. Are you with me? The same thing with the power in my home. The electricity, the air conditioning, the heating, all of these things, the alarm system that I may have in my home. All of these are companies that contract their services out. I do not tell them when they can work and when they can't. Now, if they come to my house, if there's a service that somebody is providing, for instance, they're coming in to install something, I can tell them, no, you can't come on this day. You can come on that day because this house, this property is observing the Sabbath day. You see. Now, I may have to get scheduled out another month, you see, because they don't have that time available. But there are things that are within my control, and there are things and people that are not in my control. If I don't go to the hotel staff is still there. If I don't go to the gas station is still there. Now, that's another thing. If I go to the gas station and the place is locked down, and I go to the guy's house and say, you get up, come down here, open this gas station so I can put some gas in my car. That's a whole different ball game. But I don't have other people working. And again, I'm not trying to justify what people do. I'm just trying to keep things in context. That if they're not my servant, if they're not specifically answerable to me to where I say who goes and who comes and when they go and when they come, they're not my servants and they don't work for me and I'm not signing their paychecks. I hope that helps some folks. Because folks have come down on me because I go and speak, someplace on the Sabbath day that just so happens to be in a hotel. Well, you know what? If I go and speak at a place that's not paid for, if I go to your Sabbath church, the one you're renting on the Sabbath, don't make me go there. The one you're coming in, setting up, and then tearing down to go. The one that you have your stuff in that you are paying month after month after month after month. You see, because you're paying somebody to be in that space that you're renting on the Sabbath day. I mean, this thing can get so technical to where it gets disturbing. So we have to keep things within the context of what is written and stop going all out of the way to try to find some reason because you don't agree with what somebody is doing. You've got to stop swallowing camels, straining at gnats. Amen? Exodus 20:10, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of Jehovah thy Elohim. In it thou shalt do no work. Thou, now get this, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your manservant, nor your maid servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger that is within your gates. Within whose gates? Your gates. When you go to that hotel, you in somebody else's gates. You're on somebody else's property. We are to hallow it. Hallow means that we are to set it apart or make it different from the other days of the week. Jeremiah 17:22 says, neither carry forth a burden out of your houses on the Sabbath day, neither do you any work, but hallow you the Sabbath day as I commanded your fathers. Sabbath is a day of rest. This may be the hardest for you to do. I know it was for me. This can be a major battle for me just to stop to rest. It took me a long time. My mind continues to work, or it did. I had to train my mind and my body to stop, to cease. If you have an overactive mind like mine, who think it can multitask, when it comes down to Sabbath, it has to be turned off. Exodus 31:15, but in the seventh is the Sabbath of rest. That's the seventh day. We are to make the Sabbath holy to Jehovah. Now notice it said we are to make the day holy, the Sabbath day holy. Jehovah has already made it holy. And whether you acknowledge it or not, he has made it holy. There are many people who don't acknowledge the day as a holy day. So in order for you to honor the commandment, you have to say, okay, this is a day he has made holy. I'm going to make it holy too. Just like you. He says, I've commanded you, be holy as I'm holy. He made you holy, but you decide whether or not you're going to be holy. This means that we ought to set our attention on Jehovah that day. Exodus 31:15. But in the seventh is the seventh day of rest, is the Sabbath of rest, holy to the Lord, holy to Jehovah. Exodus 20:11. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore Jehovah blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Now we see here that this verse says, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and the sea and all that is in them, and rested what? The seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day. What's the Sabbath day? The seventh day. See, because people want to make the argument, well, you know, he didn't use the word Sabbath when in the day he rested. He said it was the seventh day. He blessed the seventh day. He did. But the word rest there actually indicates a Sabbath. The Sabbath is to be a sign between Jehovah and his people. Although Jehovah brought the Gentile believers into the kingdom, he has not cast off his people Israel or the seventh-day Sabbath. Exodus 31:17, it is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days Jehovah made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. Romans 11:1, I say then, hath God cast away his people? God forbid. No. Romans 11:17, and if some of the branches be broke off, and thou being a wild olive tree were grafted in among them, and with them partakers of the root and fatness of the olive tree. In other words, if Israel was cut off, we would have nothing to be grafted into. Galatians 3:29, and if you be Messiah, then are you Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. Rest on the Sabbath. For believers, observing the Sabbath can open the door to experiencing the rest that we find in Yeshua. In Hebrews 4:1-4 and Hebrews 4:9-11, we find these words. Let us therefore fear lest the promise being left us of entering into his rest, any of you should seem to come short of it. For unto us was the gospel preached, as well as unto them. But the word preached did not profit them, not being mixed with faith in them that heard it. Now, when we see this word gospel, we find that the gospel that was preached to them was the commandments. It's the same gospel that is being preached to us, Jehovah's commandments. And just as they mixed it with faith, or did mix it with faith, we too have to mix it with faith. You see, ladies and gentlemen, it takes as much faith, listen to me, it takes as much faith to believe. As a matter of fact, I think it takes more faith. It takes more faith, I think, to believe that we don't have to keep the commandments than it does to believe that we are responsible for keeping the commandments. I mean, the Bible tells us, keep the commandments from Genesis to Revelation. As a matter of fact, I wish I had a Bible. I do. But if I can get a paperback or hardback, I might have one right here. Yeah, I do. I'll read to you in Revelation. I know that I think it's in. Give me a moment. We're just all over the place today. I believe it's in Revelation 22. And let me see if I can find it. Nope, that's not it. where he talks about outside are the dogs and them that doeth lie. Yeah, outside of the dogs and them that practice a lie or practice lies. Okay. Maketh a lie, that's what he says. Yeah. It's in Revelation 22. I was reading in Revelation and where he was talking about those who have blessed are they that wash their robes, that they may have the right to come in to the tree of life and may enter in by the gates into the city. And he set this up by talking about those who actually are responsible for keeping the words of this book. And that's the prophecy, keeping the prophecies of this book, but it also connects it to the commandments of Jehovah if you read further up. And I'm reading this and I'm thinking to myself, these are the ones that the Almighty is actually going to invite to come in to eat, what is it? That they may have the right to the tree of life and may enter in. And the other ones, those who are outside, without are the dogs and the sorcerers and the fornicators and murderers and the idolaters and everyone that loveth and maketh a lie. Isn't that amazing? And so I'm thinking, why would anybody want to be outside when they've been invited to be inside? Why would anybody choose to disobey the God of the universe? Because he's saying right here that there's something else I want to show you. He says, in verse number 11, he that is unrighteous, let him do unrighteousness still, and he that is filthy, let him be made filthy still, and he that is righteous, let him do righteousness still, and he that is holy, let him be made holy still. Behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me, to render to each man according as his work is. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. There we go. Verse 9. That's what I'm looking for. He says, and he saith unto me, see, thou do it not. I am a fellow servant with thee and with thy brethren, the prophets, and with them that keep the words of this book. What does he say? Who do we worship? Worship Elohim. Worship Elohim. And Yeshua is here to point people to Elohim, not to point people away from him. As he said, he came to do his will. He didn't come to do his own thing. And part of his will is keeping his commandments, keeping his Sabbath day. The ones who are outside are the ones who've rejected the commandments, rejected the Sabbath. And so it really takes more faith to not keep the commandments than it does to keep the commandments. Especially you got from Genesis all the way to the Revelation, where he's talking about the Almighty who gave the commands and the one who has literally committed the judgment of his entire creation to the Messiah. We can't get around him. Oh, boy. So for those individuals out there, well, brother, you just can't do it. You just can't do it. It's like you can't. If you can keep Sunday, you can keep Sabbath. I don't get it. But people have been brainwashed, and this is where doctrine, the indoctrination, the pulling people into a pit to where now they are spoon-fed the religious dogma of their denomination. And the Almighty don't want that. So this same gospel that was preached to them is what is being preached to us. For we which have believed do enter into rest. We who have believed, as he said, I've sworn in my wrath that they shall enter into my rest, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world. For he spake in a certain place of the seventh day on this wise. And God did rest the seventh day from all his work. There remaineth therefore rest to the people of God. For he that is entered into his rest, he also hath ceased from his own works, as God did from his. Let us labor therefore to enter into that rest, lest any man fall after the same example of unbelief. Now, of course, this gets into faith. It gets into understanding, believing, and doing what the Almighty is saying. So we have to put faith in him, and we have to put faith in his word. And if his word says, cease from your labors, then we have to put faith that if we do that, we are honoring him. Now, I'm going to tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't make sense not to do something on a particular day. He said, you got 6 days to do all that stuff. On this day, I don't want you to do it. It's like, what's the difference? Well, this day is mine. Okay. And I'm going to tell you, not going to the store, not going shopping, not going to restaurants, not going to movies, not going to family outings, baseball games, football games, the children's soccer games. It's like that's all family. That's family time. Well, the Sabbath is not family day. People want to make Sabbath family day. No, Sabbath is Jehovah's day. Well, brother, I know what you mean, but Sabbath is the time for families to get together to celebrate Jehovah. Yeah, but how you going to be celebrating Jehovah in the midst of a whole bunch of heathens who aren't? You can fool yourself if you want. Well, my whole family, we gathered together, and that's part of our rest and relaxation. We go to the games. Mm-hmm. You keep lying to yourself. People do it. They do it. Well, my children have events. They're in tournaments. They got all this stuff going on. It's a sacrifice I'm making for my child. And what are you teaching your child? Are you teaching your children to honor his commandments? Because I'm going to tell you something. The moment you sacrifice, the moment you compromise, the moment you give permission to your child when they're young to do their little competitions on the Sabbath day, what's going to stop them from doing their competitions when they get older? Because you're training them up in that. You're training them up. You're saying to them it's okay to do this on the Sabbath and to do that on the Sabbath and to do that on the Sabbath. Well, what about when the tournament is over? Well, you don't have a tournament. Well, what's the point? This is competition. I'm out here and then you got these people who want to compete with other Christians. Well, see, we could resolve that issue if we're not playing with heathens. We're all playing with Christians, or we're playing with Sabbatarians. Does that make a difference? Well, you got to figure that out in your own mind, in your own head. But I've heard a lot of excuses. We are to bear no burden or kindle a fire, Jeremiah 17:27. But if you will not hearken unto me to hallow the Sabbath day and not to bear burden, even entering in at the gates of Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I have to also say, ladies and gentlemen, I know that the stands that we take, it seems that it leaves people very little room to wiggle. And it's challenging for some people. And I stand here and I say these things, and sometimes I say them with a smirk and I say them with a smile and a grin on my face. But I also realize that there are people out there who are having a hard time dealing with this. You raising children and you want your children to be involved in things, and so you put them involved in things, and then here's someone comes along like me and you saying these things to you, and you know that there's some truth to it, and yet you say to yourself, Well, surely God understands. And I seem to be, for some people, the bearer of bad news. And the news that I'm sharing is good news. It's like, how can you be a bearer of bad news when you're bringing good news? Good news don't always sound like good news. It really don't. Sometimes the good news is correction, and it's not pleasant. Sometimes the good news is chastisement. Sometimes the good news is instructions that you don't want to follow. And they're not pleasant. It's tough. But I'll tell you something, when you make a stand, when you set your heart like a flint, you set your mind like a flint, I'm going to do what Jehovah says, come what may. And whatever the repercussions are, you know, either my God is God or he's not. You know, it's just the bottom line. If the prophet Elijah can challenge the prophets of Baal, and the challenges that he was challenging with pales in comparison to the challenges that we face. But if you're not willing to make a stand, you know, Jehovah is not obligated to stand with you. And if you don't see him stand until you've done everything you know. And sometimes I'll tell you something, he sends challenges toward us to see how we're going to respond. Yeah, he knows, but he wants you to see, because there's a lot of people out there, they talk a good talk until they're challenged. They talk a good talk until they're confronted. You don't know what you'll do until you're confronted with that situation. You're talking about what you will and what you won't do. You got a lot of backbone as long as you're not confronted with what other people are confronted with. But when you got your feet in their shoes, now let's see what you're going to do. And sometimes Father will challenge us just to show us what's in us so that we can humble ourselves. Numbers 15:32 through 36. And while the children of Israel was in the wilderness, they found a man that gathered sticks upon the Sabbath day. And they that found him gathering sticks brought him unto Moses and Aaron and unto all the congregation. And they put him in ward, in prison, because it was not declared what should be done to him. And the Lord said unto Moses, the man shall be surely put to death. All the congregation shall stone him with stones without the camp. And all the congregation brought him without the camp, and stoned him with stones, and he died. And as the Lord commanded Moses. And you know, as I've shared with you before, when I first read this, it's like, why you got to get everybody involved? Why you got to get the whole camp, the whole community involved in it? Because, see, when you uphold the law, you become more aware of the law. Are you with me? It's hard. When you uphold the law, you become more aware of the law. Now, you got bleeding hearts. Why we got to stone him? Why can't you just forgive him? Moses, why didn't the Almighty just forgive him? He only did it once. And that's a legitimate question. But the commandments of Jehovah, you know, we don't know. I would dare say is he's trying to set a precedent that this is a zero tolerance community. The wages of sin is death. You violate the commandments, there are repercussions. Everything that you experience is a response to something. The verses from Numbers are referring to labor, the process of gathering wood and preparing a fire for cooking or for some other purpose. But the man wasn't even kindling a fire, he was gathering wood. We are to reverence Jehovah's sanctuary on the Sabbath, Leviticus 26:2. You shall keep my Sabbaths and reverence my sanctuary. I am Jehovah. Now, of course, this is not the tabernacle, and this is not the temple. But this is a place where the people of Jehovah has chosen to gather, and we declare this place to be holy because we invite the Holy One to come and commune with us who's supposed to be holy. But this is still just a building. It's a building that we're careful about what we bring in and what we allow to come in. because we wanted to be sanctified. We wanted to be set apart. But this is not the house of the Lord. Make no mistake about it. You are the houses of Jehovah. This is simply a place we gather. This is where all the houses, all the stones come together for worship and for prayer and for, seeking his face and hearing his word and fellowship. The term Sabbath is used in the context of the weekly Sabbath, weekly and yearly Sabbath. From a New Testament view, the body of the believer is the temple. 1 Corinthians 6:19, what? Know you not that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost, which is in you, which you have of God, and you are not your own? And I'm going to tell you something, this is the hardest concept for human beings to grasp. You're not your own. You're not your own. You're not your own. We are to assemble for teaching, for ministering, for worship, and prayer on the Sabbath. Leviticus 23:3. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest. And this is where the holy convocation is entered. Now, up until this point, this word is rarely brought out. And the idea that you do something other than rest on the Sabbath is clearly made known in this particular verse with this very peculiar word, holy convocation, which is a sacred gathering, a sacred assembly. What makes it an assembly it's an assembly of sacred people. That's what makes it a sacred gathering. It's an assembly of sacred people. I'm going to tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. When you start seeing yourself as somebody sacred, someone holy, there's a difference in how you carry yourself. There's a difference in how you see yourself. There's a difference in how you conduct yourself. Because you get a glimpse that, you know what? I am a representative of the Most High. I'm going to tell you something. That puts the fear of God in me. That I represent him. That what I do is going to cause someone to either be drawn to him or repelled from him. That my life, I'm here as a mouthpiece, as a spokesperson, as an agent, as a representative. I don't represent me. I know when I was at home, my parents were very concerned about the Bailey name and how we represented the Bailey family. And they didn't want us out there embarrassing them. You know what I'm saying? You don't go to school embarrass me, man. You get a serious beat down if you bring embarrassment to the name, to the family. What are people going to think about me, my son? I'm out here trying to, we're not raising heathens. Don't let somebody come and tell mom or dad that your boy been out there misrepresenting. You know what I'm saying? And that was serious. But it pales in comparison to our representing the Almighty. And there have been too many people. There's a new television program coming out called Preachers of Something. Used to be Preachers of LA, then Preachers of Detroit, now it's just Preachers. And one of the soul ministers on there is going through a scandal right now that is literally rock their church and the denomination, and just so happens to be the head of the organization's son, who's leading one of the largest congregations, around in that denomination. And now he's got a television program. He divorced his wife and got some girl pregnant. And now you're on TV. Preachers. Like, who you representing? Who do you represent? See, when you begin to see yourself as a sacred, this sacred assembly is just an assembly without the sacred ones. And so it's an assembly of sacred people. An assembly is an assembly of set apart people. This building is just a building until we assemble. So it's not the building that makes the place sacred, it's you. It's me. And so we have a holy convocation. A holy convocation is when holy people convocate. Are you with me? The term convocation, mikra, means something called out, a public meeting, a rehearsal, an assembly, a sacred gathering, possibly for reading, as some would say. Hebrews 10:25, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together. There's that holy convocation. As the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. Jeremiah 17:26, and they shall come from the cities of Judah. And let me say this, there are people who rather gather in their home. You know, you have 6 days to gather with your family in your home. You do. 6 days, every night, evening meals, breakfast, morning meals, prayer, fellowship, all week long. But see, people who have that narrow mindset doesn't acknowledge the family of God. See, they're little nucleus. You're looking biological. Jehovah looks spiritual. You're looking at biological in the little gathering of folks that you gather with, and then trying to pull people into your gatherings to gather and all that. And I'm not knocking that. Please believe me. When people live outside of an assembly where they can't assemble, that's the next best thing. But when you got people who live among and around other people, I'm going to tell you something. There are places around this country they would love to have a place where they can assemble with other saints. And then you got people who have it and stay home. Oh, well, we're tired. We just watch it online today. Next week, we just watch it online today. We're just going to watch it online. Okay. See, they won't be watching it online when that trumpet sound. Really won't. They certainly won't be watching it online in that new heaven and new earth. It won't be televised. TBN will be no more. TC, none of these people. You're going to have to show up. And so this is the rehearsal for showing up. Don't forsake the assembly, because that's exactly what happens when people don't come. You got the ability to, you're not shut in, you're not sick. You should gather with the saints. Well, I don't know if I like some of them people. They don't like you either. But you get to know each other. And the more you get to know people, the more you begin, oh, now I understand why you act so stupid. I get it now. You got some mental issues. I get it. You don't get out much. You're not around people much. Well, I'm an introvert. Mm-hmm. Well, be an introvert among other introverts. Pretty soon you got a lot of introverts extroverting. Whether you're being rough right now. I know I am, because there's too many people sitting at home in their little comfort zone and not realizing that not only are you not adding to the body what you're supposed to be bringing to the body, but the people who have what they're supposed to be bringing to add to you is not happening either. You see, the body of Messiah build one another. And you have a responsibility to be building just as you have a responsibility to be built. And we build one another. We rub each other. Sometimes we rub each other the wrong way. But I'll tell you something, being among people who rub me the wrong way have helped me learn how to turn. Because if you're rubbing me the wrong way, if you're rubbing me in the own spot, I just need to make an adjustment, because pretty soon you'll find the right spot to rub me. You understand what I'm saying? So we learn how to adjust. We learn how to deal with the personalities and the quirks of each other. We learn to understand, and I'm going to tell you something. There's some people I've had some real issues with until I sat down and talked with them. And once I sat down and talked with them, I realized they're this way because. So now I understand this person a little bit better. I understand, and I'm not sitting back making judgments because now I have taken the time to get to know this person at a level to where they've allowed me to know them, and the same with me. Because anybody who've known me know that I'm not the easiest person to be around. But after a while, after you get to know me, it becomes a little bit more easier. You see, and pretty soon, you might like hanging around me for a little while. Just a little while. Hallelujah. And they shall come, Jeremiah 17, from the cities of Judah and from the places about Jerusalem and from the land of Benjamin and from the plain and from the mountains and from the south, bringing burnt offerings and sacrifices, meat offerings and incense, and bringing sacrifices of praise unto the house of the Lord. Yeshua, as well as Paul, observed the Sabbath. Mark 6:2. And when the Sabbath day was come, he began to teach in the synagogue. And many, hearing him, was astonished, saying, From whence has this man these things? And what wisdom is this which is given unto him, that even such mighty works are wrought by his hands? Acts 17:2. And Paul, as his manner was, went in unto them, and 3 Sabbath days reasoned with them out of the Scriptures. Paul prayed with believers on the Sabbath. Acts 16:13. Some of these verses you'll see they were repeated in chapters gone by. But it's just reaffirming. In Acts 16:13, and on the Sabbath, we went out of the city by a riverside where prayer was wont to be made. And we sat down and spake unto the women which resorted thither. These women gathered on the Sabbath day by the river. That's where they went out to pray. Now you understand, synagogues, many want to say that the early believers went into the synagogue. And I have to challenge that. I used to believe that too. You want to hear the scriptures read? You would have to go to a place where they had scripture. But I also find it challenging that believers could go into a place and be among people who rejected Yeshua. And we find that when Paul went among these places in synagogues and he began to minister Yeshua to them, they was not so happy to have him there. And then in other places, that as long as he was given completely to the Jews and the converts to Judaism, they were fine until people within the town caught wind of the message and they started gathering. Then all of a sudden the message was getting out to folks who weren't in Judaism. We may keep the Sabbath by doing good. Yeshua responded to the question about doing good by saying, Matthew 12:11-12, and he said unto them, What man shall there be among you that shall have one sheep, and if it fall into a pit on the Sabbath day, will he not lay hold on it? Now he didn't say push him into the pit. How much then is a man better than a sheep? Wherefore it is lawful to do well on the Sabbath day. And then I got people who take this to the extreme. Well, if it's well to do lawful on the Sabbath day, my friend is moving. I won't be in service today because I'm going to be helping my friend move. It's good to do good on the Sabbath day. Was your friend not moving on Thursday? Or what about Sunday? Well, he going to church Sunday. He don't work on this Sunday. Folks, I've heard a lot of stuff. Folks want to help people move. Folks want to help people do stuff. Wedding showers, baby showers, all kinds of stuff. Birthday parties. Yeshua healed on the Sabbath, John 9:14. And it was, what do you mean we can't do birthday parties on the Sabbath? What do you mean we can't do weddings? Weddings are holy. Oh, yeah. And it was the Sabbath day when Yeshua made the clay and opened his eyes. We are to avoid extensive travel on the Sabbath, Matthew 24:20. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. Now, I know he's speaking to a people who are so strict concerning the Sabbath day. He's saying, listen, if the Sabbath, if this moment came on the Sabbath day, you're going to be in trouble. Because religiously, people had restricted people's movements and how far they can move on the Sabbath day without violating the Torah or the commandments of the religious leaders, the law of the religious leaders. One was permitted only to travel a short distance because of the stress exerted in travel. Acts 1:12. Then returned they unto Jerusalem from the mount called Olivet, which is from Jerusalem a Sabbath day's journey. Now, a Sabbath day's journey was how long does it take to get someplace during a period of time. And so that's not a command that you can only go so far on the Sabbath, but one of the things that we want and encourage people to do is to restrict your movement. If you don't have to be making long journeys, don't buy a plane ticket. Don't buy a bus ticket. Don't be making plans to travel long distance on the Sabbath day, especially if you can make plans to travel before or after the Sabbath day. Exodus 16:29. See, for that the Lord has given you the Sabbath, therefore he giveth you on the sixth day the bread of 2 days. Abide you every man in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the seventh day. Again, we should understand that travel in biblical times was often by foot and exhausting. We are not to buy or sell on the Sabbath. Nehemiah 10:31. And if the people of the land bring ware or any victuals on the Sabbath day to sell, that we would not buy it of them on the Sabbath or on the holy day. Now, this weekend, I have an event that I've got to move from Amarillo, Texas to Friendswood, Texas. And so I have a flight. And, it was one of those situations to where it was virtually either you don't do the service or you do a flight. Now, the thing about it, ladies and gentlemen, and this is where, we have to understand that Father doesn't say how far you can go on the Sabbath day. But what he does encourages us, just as he gives us a conscience, he gives us a desire to please him, is we have to make decisions. And when we're making decisions, we should make sure that he is in the midst of those decisions. Now, the beauty of this is that, it's the day of Pentecost and not the regular weekly Sabbath. And there are certain restrictions, that are not, or there are certain things that are permissible on certain high days that are not permissible on other days. But the whole point of it is that I wrestled with this. And I think we should wrestle with stuff. And we need to be praying, okay, Father, is this something that I'm supposed to be doing? Is this something that you're having me to do? And we have to be very, very careful that we don't move into a legalistic position to where we even tie Jehovah's hands in what he can and cannot permit us to do at certain times. And again, this is not making excuses, but one of the things is that this is one of those areas where I believe grace fits. We don't live in Graceville, but there are times when Father seems to be putting certain things out there. It's like, okay. And for me, this was one of those. The last thing I ever want to do is appear to be a hypocrite, to say and teach one thing and then to do something else. So I put me out there because it's like, I'm constantly wrestling with what is permissible, what is allowable, what is forbidden. And there are times you're making calls. And this is where heart, this is where motive is important, because we are always to be aware of the motivations, the motives for what we do. Amen. Is it not strange that internationally, Saturday is usually the biggest sales day? Some believers even have their garage sales on Saturday. We are to avoid doing our own pleasure or speaking our own words on the Sabbath. Isaiah 58, 13 through 14. If you hold back your foot on Shabbat from pursuing your own interests on my holy day, if you call Shabbat a delight, Adonai's, Jehovah's holy day, worth honoring, then honor it by not doing your usual things or pursuing your interests or speaking about them. If you do, you will find delight in Adonai, Jehovah. I will make you ride on the heights of the land and feed you with the heritage of your ancestor Yaakov, for the mouth of Jehovah has spoken. And this is the complete Jewish Bible. We ought to redirect our attention from what we want to do or say and focus on what Jehovah wants from us. It is not to be a day of entertainment. Isn't it strange that most major sporting events are held Friday nights and Saturday? Have you ever set aside the Sabbath just to think about the things of Jehovah? This is what he wants us to do, ladies and gentlemen. We are to call the Sabbath a delight, Isaiah 58, 13. And call the Sabbath a delight. It's just that simple. In other words, we are to look forward to the Sabbath and purpose to enjoy it. Once we started, we will look forward to the rest and time with our Heavenly Father. Exodus 31, 16. The people of Israel are to keep the Sabbath, to observe Shabbat throughout all their generations as a perpetual covenant. Complete Jewish Bible. The Sabbath is a time to celebrate the covenant we have with the Father. Isaiah 58, 14. Then shalt thou delight thyself in the Lord. Jehovah is to be the center of the Sabbath. We should seek to do his pleasure. We may carry out basic necessities on the Sabbath. Matthew 12, 1 through 5. At that time, Yeshua went on the Sabbath day through the corn, and his disciples were an hungered, and began to pluck the ears of corn and to eat. But when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto him, Behold, thy disciples do that which is not lawful to do upon the Sabbath day. But he said unto them, Have you not read what David did when he was an hungered, and they that were with him, how he entered into the house of God, and did eat the showbread which was not lawful for him to eat, neither for them which were with him, but only for the priests? Or have you not read in the law how that on the Sabbath days the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are blameless? How did Yeshua observe the Sabbath? This is where we're going to pick up next week. Hallelujah. Okay, I think we covered some good ground. Shalom, saints. Tithing and giving first fruit offerings are critical parts of the believer's faith and has its foundation back in Genesis 4:4, when Abel brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And Jehovah had respect unto Abel and to his offering. Abel was commended by Jehovah in Hebrews 11:4, where it states that by faith Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and by it he being dead yet speaketh. Solomon said in Proverbs 3, 9 and 10, Honor Jehovah with thy substance and with the first fruits of all thine increase. So shall your barns be filled with plenty, and your presses shall burst out with new wine. The prophet Malachi wrote in chapter 3, verse 11 and 12, To bring ye all the tithe into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house, and prove me now herewith, says Jehovah of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven, and pour you out a blessing, that there should not be room enough to receive it. And I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground, neither shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field, says Jehovah of hosts. And all nations shall call you blessed, for you shall be a delightsome land, saith Jehovah of hosts. When we tithe and give offerings consistently in obedience to Jehovah's commandments, we can count on him to keep his promises to us and consistently meet all of our needs. It is our Father's desire to bless you. However, it begins with you and your act of obedience to tithe and give offerings. Do it today. Shalom.
For more information, visit www.arthurbaileyministries.com or call 888-899-1479. This program is made possible through financial contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.